Computer.
Oh,
there we
show
go.
up. You're show up.
Okay, so sorry about that, but again, again, this is an example of some of Eric's artwork. Eric is going to be talking tonight on techniques for tying Atlantic salmon flies, along with some things for us to consider when tying artistic flies, which this is clearly art. So I'm very excited. We're very excited to have Eric tonight. Eric is not new to fly fishing or fly tying, as clearly noted here with his work here. Eric started tying flies when he was 14. He gave me a little more background on that last night. Very interesting, where he was in several tying programs. He was in an apprenticeship program at a very young age, and that was pretty cool to hear that background. And when he started tying around 14, early on he took an interest in tying salmon flies. Outside of fly tying, he's a licensed guide, and he focuses on fly fishing education. He also teaches fly fishing at Cornell University. So that's a brief synopsis on Eric. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to go spotlight Eric. Let's see here. Let me find you, Eric. There we are. There we go. Eric, you're spotlit, and we are recording, everyone. Just a reminder, we're recording. Please feel free to ask questions by just popping off the space bar there. And Eric, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for doing this.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. Hey, everyone. It's nice to see some familiar faces and some new folks, and maybe some more folks will show up and join us. Time will tell. We'll see. Happy to be here. Matt reached out to me a little while back asking if I would do one of these masterclass formats for the club, and I was happy to do it. He wanted me to talk about streamers or something that a lot of people talk about, and I brought up the idea of salmon fly tying, and partly because I do a lot of it, and it's kind of what I've been focusing on the most this winter. And part of it is because there's not a lot available. You know, you can find a million videos on tying a nymph, which is it's cool, but it's not as easy to find things on tying salmon flies. And so I've only ever done this sort of talk one time in my entire life. So this is not going to be one of my talks where I've done it a bunch and it's like super tight. The last time I did this talk, I was telling Matt last night, I don't know if I was 19 or 20, but I did it for the Trout Unlimited chapter down in Binghamton. And the individual who asked me to do it brought me out to dinner, and before the talk, and so we were chatting, and he's like, you know, let me get you a beer. And I'm like, I'm 20 years old, like I can't get a beer. And he was beside himself, could not believe he had like a teenager doing this talk for the chapter. And that was a few years ago. So I haven't had the chance to talk about salmon flies like this for a very long time. So that was part of the reason why I suggested it. He seemed interested in the idea, so here we are. I want to make it kind of clear what the talk is going to be and what it's not going to be, just so that we're kind of on the same page, so to speak, for the evening. It's definitely not going to be an exhaustive history of salmon flies, right? I might talk a little bit about kind of what they are, you know, in terms of what are we actually talking about tonight, but it's not going to be walking you through history, right? It's not going to be some exhaustive kind of tome of all the, you know, classic fly tyers. If you're hoping for that, sorry, we're tying tonight. The other thing that it's not is I'm not going to sit here and simply tie a fly from start to finish. I feel like even though I don't know all of you tonight, I get the sense that you can probably, if you were driven to tie one of these flies, you could look at the recipe and get a decent sense of how to do a lot of it. But there are components to these flies that maybe if it is sorry, if it's new to you, then you might just be wondering how to even start. So I thought it might be worthwhile to spend tonight kind of picking apart some of the unusual components of these flies to maybe fill in some of the gaps, right? And then if you were to tie one of these, you might be set up more for success from the start about how to approach it. If that makes sense. We might maybe end up with a complete fly. I have no idea. We'll see how tonight goes. I have some flies in various stages of completion, and I definitely want to answer questions that you have along the way. So don't hesitate. Like Matt said, hit the space bar. You can ask questions. I'll clarify as best as possible, and we will get through exactly the amount that we get through in the next couple of hours. And if we end up with a fly, cool. If not, then you'll still hopefully walk away with maybe a new approach, new techniques, just a new way of doing things. And understanding that even if you never tie one of these flies in your life, many of the techniques are useful in other areas, especially if you tie wet flies. So if you're using floss for wet flies, or doing the classic feather wing wet flies, hair wing coachmans or fontinalis fin, a lot of the stuff conveys really well. So even if you don't ever tie one of these, you may still pick up a few things in other parts of tying. Cool? Cool. All right. So big picture before I start tying, I want to go through a little bit, in terms of what we're actually talking about, right? So full dressed Atlantic salmon flies originated basically in the 1800s, beginning in England, but then branching out to Scotland, Ireland for sure, France, west coast of France, especially any of the rivers that receive Atlantic salmon or received, and then it migrated a little bit as time went on to the east coast of America, North America, Canada, and the U.S. So the bulk of this came from when there was a major movement exploring the rest of the world, and so tall ships going to places like China, bringing back exotic feathers that were often used for things like women's hats. We're fly tyers, and so even in 1820 or something, we're looking at feathers being like, that's a really cool feather, I want to use that for a fly. And so the basis of a lot of these honestly originated from butterflies. So if you can use your imagination, and you'll be able to see some of these flies more close up once I switch cameras. The idea was somewhere along the line, somebody looked at a butterfly, fell in the water, fish ate it or something like that, and all of a sudden they wanted to tie a fly that emulated a butterfly. And so as you see some of the flies tonight, maybe you can imagine that being the premise behind them. So full dress flies have a lot of materials that are no longer available, that are illegal, just because they're so rare, scarce, extinct. And so, but it's this large format fly with a built wing, married wing. That's the focus of tonight. If we have time, we'll get into some other, maybe hair wings or stacked wings, a little bit different, but that's kind of where we're starting from, was that idea. And so even though there's a multitude of different kinds of salmon flies, our focus tonight's really that. So we'll call it a full-dressed married wing salmon fly, and we'll kind of leave it at that. Cool. All right. So I'm going to switch over to a different camera that will hopefully show you the fly a little better. We'll see. And hopefully things won't freeze. All right, I think we're getting it. Sorry about that. Oh, hold on one second.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Let's see. How are we now? Hold on. Sorry about that.
Okay. Looks good.
Good. This camera I have sort of bogarted from my wife, and it works great, but it is not perfect. All right, so fly I think looks pretty good. This is a Mar-a-Lage. This is one of my favorite full dress flies. I just wanted to give you that idea of, you know, married wing. So a combination of swan, goose, turkey, different pheasants to create the wing. And we'll get into more of the materials later on, but that's what we're talking about. So now we'll start from scratch. Have any of you tied any of these flies before? I know at least one of you has.
I haven't personally.
Okay. I'm just always curious, kind of the basis of understanding.
I've dabbled. Yeah.
Cool. So the best thing you can do in terms of setting yourself up for success for these flies is to create as smooth a thread base as possible. And a really simple but useful technique to do that when you just begin putting the thread on the hook is keeping a long length of thread extra. And then you can use that and hold it almost vertically. So that way, when you are putting your wraps down, every single wrap is going to lay right behind the previous. So it sounds simple, it's sort of a no-brainer, but it, you know, if you haven't done it or you haven't noticed it, there you go. This is a really, you know, simple method just to, as much as possible, keep those wraps super tight as you are laying that thread base down. As far as, sorry, what?
Hey, Eric.
Yes.
It looks like you have something around the hook. Can you talk about that?
Oh, yeah. While I tie my flies built to be able to be fished, the vast majority end up behind glass. And these are hooks that are japanned, and that means they have basically a coating that's been baked onto them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd prefer to not scratch that. There's plenty of very high-end devices on the market designed for salmon flies, but there's other ways you can also protect that finish. One of which is using something as simple as the corner of a material bag. So if you were to look at my materials, you would see that many of them have corners missing, because what I'll do is simply trim the corner off, and then I can tuck the hook bend into the plastic, and that does a nice job of preventing the blackened finish from scratching off. So when I put this hook behind glass, it'll look as good as it does when it comes out of the bag. You know, I'm a big advocate of Dynaking vices. They have grooves cut into the jaws that also do a really nice job of protecting the hooks as well. So that, combined with just that little bit of plastic over the hook bend, does a nice job protecting the finish of the fly. What this doesn't show as well is where I want to stop my thread in general is at the back of the barb. So it's a nice guideline. It's not the is-all end-all, but in terms of just if you're aiming to tie these, typically you're looking to end the thread at the back of the hook barb, okay? And to start these flies, we're gonna do what's called the tag, and then the tail, and then the butt. I'm not gonna do, like I said, a whole fly, but we're gonna just wanna show you just getting started with these. And so the tag generally goes from the back of the barb to the front of the hook point. It's just a guideline. And typically speaking, we're gonna be using a very fine, just a small French tinsel for the beginning of the fly. Not every single fly has this, but this is a very common tag, a combination of small French tinsel and either a rayon floss or traditionally, obviously, a silk floss. And there's some differences between the two types of floss. So you can get the same colors, rayon floss, Pearsall's silk floss, but they definitely function differently. They lay a lot differently, and we'll talk about that here in a second. So it took me too many years to learn the importance of just a little bit of wax on thread at various points, because that is what you're doing when you're tying these flies is you're basically, as much as possible, encouraging the materials to do what you would hope that they would do. And using just a touch of wax, it doesn't have to be super tacky. This is a, very old, just, this is Thompson brand wax. This has been around probably before I was born, but it's wax. So you don't need to have anything fancy or extra tacky, but some degree of grip goes a long way to just encourage the flies the materials to stay where you want them to. And it also allows you to do fewer wraps. So we're gonna just tie this tag in. And the way that I like to tie it in, I'm gonna try to do it on the opposite side, which is not what I normally do, but this way you'll be able to see it. I'm going to lay the material on the side of the hook, like so. And without covering any of my wraps, I'm going to bring my thread up. And you'll notice that I'm going just beyond the hook point, because what I want is to keep the thickness of the thread the same. So I'm gonna unwrap a little bit. Okay. So I've brought my thread up to where the hook point starts. So what I can do is trim this off. And that just keeps the thickness of the thread and materials the same for where the tag is gonna be.
Do you have a preference on your thread, Eric, for tying these flies?
I do. Thank you for asking me, because that was something I was gonna mention. So yeah, I prefer just a UTC 70 strand white to start. I like a multi-strand thread because it lays more flat than a single strand. And then I finish the flies typically with a 14-aught black. So when I get to the head of the fly and I'm getting to those last few steps, I switch to a black thread, but I begin with white for a couple of reasons. One, it allows me to see what I'm doing better because it's just brighter, but it also allows the color of the thread to pop more, or the color of the floss to pop more. So when I do a thread body on it, it's just like a primer with paint, it's the same exact function. So it'll allow the color to be just a touch brighter than if I were to use a darker colored thread. But yeah, so this is just, regular 70 strand UTC. I'm gonna bring my thread up a little bit, loose wraps, I'm gonna undo them in a second, but I'm just gonna take the French tinsel and I'm gonna do 4 or 5 wraps. There's no, there's a lot of artistic license in these flies, but I usually like about 4 to 5 wraps. I use a vise that's true rotary. I'm a big fan of being able to see my fly from all angles and to keep it in the same plane. And so let me flip this over, because now that I've tied that off, I just want to make sure it's clear. What I'm doing is I've finished the tag on the near side of the fly, and I'm gonna keep it there. So it's gonna keep that uniformity for the floss portion of the tag. So thickness is as much as possible the same. And again, I'm gonna bring this up to the front of the hook point, get a sense, thereabouts. Cool. Trim that off. And then I think what we're gonna do is just use a little bit of, I already have this cut, but whether it be silk or rayon, typically it's a 5 strand or thereabouts. And so when you take it off of the spool, you end up with a number of different pieces. And so what that allows you to do is you can use 1, 2, 3, however thick you want your body, you can trim to that. Typically I just use 1 single strand, and I try to, as much as possible, keep the remainder someplace where I can find them and use them later on. And so this is just, this might be 2 strands, but pretty thin. So this is going to be filling the space between the front of the hook point and the tinsel. So I'm going to put just a few, actually I'm going to, before I do that, I'm going to add a little bit of wax. Just to hold this better. I'm going to come just in front of the hook point. It's hard to see some of these little nuances, but I'm going to do 1, 2, 3 wraps in front. And I want to, as much as possible, get the floss obviously uniform, but also to spread out. I don't want to keep the twist in this material. I want it to lay as flat as possible. And just 1 wrap in front of the other. Pretty tight. All the way to the silver tinsel. I'll make sure I'm not missing any. Looks pretty good. Keep the wraps as close as I can so that I'm ending up with 2 layers of floss. The reason that I ended, or I'm sorry, the reason that I started the floss forward of where I wanted is now what I can do is take my thread, I can undo 1, 2, 3 wraps, and then go over this thread. So it's basically ending right at the hook point. And that wax just helps hold it in place. I don't
So
like
Eric,
to use any extra.
Eric, when you're tying your flies, are you tying to duplicate some historic recipe, or are you taking artistic liberty to try to make something new?
Yes. So
you do both?
So it depends greatly. So I try to be knowledgeable about traditional patterns, and I tie a number of them. Mm-hmm. Many of my flies, I'm taking what we'll call a pretty high degree of artistic license with them. And I guess that comes partly from the fact that these materials are hard to get. And so if I can tie a fly that sort of speaks to me and I have the materials for it, it's much more manageable and enjoyable for me than, getting frustrated wanting to tie a fly that I might not have a particular material for, whether it's the authentic version or a substitute version. Mm. And I think that, all flies came from somewhere. And so I look at it as sort of a blank canvas, right? And I've been doing a lot of different brook trout inspired flies. So my favorite fish is a brook trout. And so to be able to take that, kind of the palette of colors from a brook trout and then emulate that on a salmon fly, to me is in many ways much more interesting than just tying another Durham Ranger or Green Highlander, which are traditional classic patterns. Not to knock those, but I think personally my enjoyment is higher when I can come up with something versus follow a recipe, right? And that's kind of how I am with a lot of my flies. I don't typically stick to regular patterns. I end up either doing what we'll call a variant of those, or I just make something totally different that kind of suits me a little bit more. So yeah. So right now, I'm not going to say that we're doing a specific fly right now. This is just a common beginning of many salmon flies. Chaz is asking me to mention the hook. Yeah, so this is a pretty straightforward hook, pretty common. This is a Partridge Bartlett 3/0. I have a package somewhere. I use a lot of these. It's not necessarily a super high-end hook in the realm of certain salmon fly tires, but it's a good workhorse hook. Here you go. And relatively easy to get. So sort of, but yeah, Partridge, Bartlett traditional salmon hook. I have these, this is the loop eye, but I also have blind eye. But to do a blind eye hook where there's no, loop die on it, you need to gut, and I have some, but not a lot, so I tend to use these quite a bit. Thanks, Chaz, for the question. That was an oversight on my part. Cool. All right. So if you're lucky, or not super critical, you ended up with floss that looks pretty good. Now, if you have some bumps in it, something that you probably don't have in your tools for a lot of flies is a chunk of bone. And a chunk of bone is a really nice, this is just a piece of like deer femur. And I just kind of broke it, and here's a piece of it. And it's really good because it's very smooth, but it has just barely a texture to it. And it's really nice for encouraging floss, both rayon to a lesser extent, but definitely silk, to smooth out, and kind of like, if it's like a little bit ridged, to kind of just get some of those upper pieces to kind of smooth. And so all that you need to do is just with a little bit of pressure is just go back and forth over the floss, and it'll do a nice job of smoothing things out without damaging it. Sometimes if you use too much pressure with a rayon or a synthetic floss, it can dull it's got a lot of shine to it, and it can kind of dull that. With silk it's better in many ways, but it has a bit more, it has a bit more matte to begin with, so it doesn't have the shine too dull the way that rayon does. But that's just a little something that, find out however you find it. But a little chunk of bone, make sure you wash it super thoroughly, get all the oils off, any kind of, anything off of it, let it totally dry. But I've had this thing for over a decade, and it looks the same as when I first began using it, as far as I remember. But that's just one quick, simple thing just to kind of smooth out the floss a little bit better. That works with both. Just if you're using with rayon, use it a little lighter so you don't dull that finish. The silk has a bit more kind of shape to it. The synthetic rayon the strands are just flat as flat can be. And so this, the silk, it got more kind of cushion to it. It has more like flexibility when you wrap it than rayon. And so you're able to smooth it out better. Whereas with the synthetic rayon, if you have any dips and dives, because it's so tight to begin with, it's more resistant to smoothing out, if that makes sense. Cool. Any other questions before I get to the tail? All right. So that's the tag of the fly. Now we're going to do the tail. And the tail typically is golden pheasant crests. When you go to a store and you buy golden pheasant crests, you're usually going to get something like this, which is like the head, all the crests themselves, and then the black and yellow feathers, which are called tippets. Now, if you buy this, it's, ideally you can buy it in person. You can find a more mature bird which has longer crests on it. Very hard to find. But when you pull a crest off, it's typically going to be kind of wonky, not quite the shape you want. It might not have a great curve to it. So the best thing that you can do for yourself, besides just searching through a million of them to get one that works for you, is to steam them. And so all that you need to do, typically what I do is just pull all the crests off. I have 2 tins that I keep them in, so tailing size and then finishing size. And these are just a bunch of crests. There's Amherst and golden pheasant in there that I've steamed. And when you steam a crest, or any feather for that matter, if you have feathers for a lot of things, I steam feathers for my musky flies, big, foot long, big just schlappen feathers that are kind of twisted or whatever. When you steam a feather, it removes all the memory from it. And so it's a really simple, easy process to, take a lot of feathers that if you first look at right out of the bag, because when you put anything in the bag and leave it there for a while, it gets mashed up and twisted and compacted, and it just brings the life back to it when you steam it. And it really is as simple as getting a teapot going on your stove, holding the feather over it. If sometimes, like I love my D-loop tweezers, if you're kind of worried, just put it in the tweezer to kind of hold over the steam. Keep your hands away from it, burn your hands. I've done that too many times, but then it's good. It takes just a few seconds and you can watch it, and it's super satisfying to see a crest that comes back from being just kind of a flat, not very useful looking feather to something that you can really work with, right? I want to be clear that there's a million ways you can do these flies. This is just what works for me. This is my method, but there's a million methods. But this is just a way that you can approach this. So putting a crest tail on a salmon fly, you want it to end roughly where the bend of the hook is. You don't want it to go way far out necessarily. Again, artistic license, do what you want, but typically you want it to end, you want it to generally kind of match the bend of the hook. And as you do this more and more, you'll get kind of a sense of what that looks like. You can tie in the crest like so and fiddle with it. I do that sometimes. I will occasionally cut off shortly ahead of where I want to tie it in, remove the feathers. It'll be a much more sparse look, but it's much easier to not have errant feathers going everywhere. So, do what you will. There's no wrong way. I do both depending, and occasionally I use two crests, especially if I'm going to trim it first. We'll see if I just tie it in, what it looks like, and if it looks any good. And if it looks like trash, maybe I'll do it over again. This is definitely the kind of fly tying that it's occasionally filled with like expletives and, seething frustration when you are messing with some of these feathers that are just simply not doing what you want them to do. And so doing this on camera is, it's awesome. All right, so you can look at it from all the angles. It's sometimes easier to tie the whole feather in some ways. You can kind of see some of those errant fibers that are down here. Not great, not terrible, but it looks, it's all right. You just want it to be uniform, sitting on top of the hook, curving with the shank of the hook, lined up. That's okay. I put just a little bit of wax on first. It really holds materials in place so much better, especially with this thread, which is pretty slippery to start with. Sometimes what I'll do is leave material on until I know that portion is set. I think for time's sake, I'll just remove it for now. We'll call it pretty good, I think. All right. I live in 2021. And so as much as I respect the classic everything, I also like to take use of what's available to me. And so the traditional thing would have either been to use a little bit of lacquer or just the wax on here. But what I've found, because a real bummer is when you're doing the butt, which is usually either ostrich herl, sometimes seal fur or wool, but usually it's either going to be ostrich or peacock. It's a real bummer when you tie a fly for somebody and you put it in a shadow box, and then you go and maybe it's a friend and you see it, 5-10 years on the line, and the butt is broken because it's just peacock herl. It's not very strong. So I use a little UV glue periodically, and I'll show you that here in a second. So I'll just do some ostrich herl because I think in a lot of cases it looks better. But both are used quite a bit. You want to wrap it with the shape of the feather. You don't have to do what I'm doing when you're tying these, but I personally prefer a more sleek look. And so I'll strip the fibers on the side of the stem that's going to be down. Okay. Let me see if you can see that. There you go. So I've just taken a portion, the longest portion of this, stripped the fibers, Just gonna cut that off. I'll palmer them the same way that I'll palmer, you know, schlappen feather for a woolly bugger. No different. But I've just cleaned it up because, again, I like more of a sparse look for this. Tying that in just ahead of the crest tail. And then I'm going to use some, this is just Solarez Black Bone Dry. I know, Kelson is in his grave screaming, "What are you doing?" But I also think that if George Kelson was alive today, he'd probably do the exact same thing as I'm doing. I have to imagine that he would. So I'm just going to dab a little bit of this. You can use clear or black, but this just shows me where I have it. And it also covers up that white thread a little bit nicer. Again, I'll do 4 or 5 wraps, maybe 6. I'll just do it until it's the way that I want it to. Keep them as tight as you can make them, given that it's ostrich herl and absurdly fragile. Four reps. That's 5. That's pretty good. So now I'll do 1, 2, 3. Alright. Whew. Then with the light. Call it good. Much stronger than just using a little bit of wax on there. Cool. All right. So when I tie these flies, I try to really compartmentalize what they are, especially if I have limited time, right? I have a 3-year-old son, so my blocks of time to tie are often pretty small. And so I think about breaking up a fly from what I just did. I call that a fly, right? Or I might just do the tag as a fly. And normally it takes less time. I'm talking through it. But then I could consider the body a fly. And then I might do the throat as a fly and then the wing as a fly. So that way I can do a half hitch at whatever point I'm done. It's kind of like saving it. And then I can come back to it later. Or if you're like me, then you end up with a whole bunch of bodies that you have just not yet come back to. And they're just sitting waiting to be messed with further. But that is a way, because looking at these flies can sometimes be overwhelming. So if you break it down to, I'm going to tie this part of a fly today, that might take you 20 minutes and then you're done, right? Just like so many other flies. And then you can come back to when you have more time or more patience. So hopefully that helps just to get you started with like, okay, we're going to just sit down and do this thing. A nice approach to just starting the fly. How are we doing? Okay. Anybody asleep? Say yes if you're asleep. All right.
This is great, man. This is awesome.
Sweet. Questions before I move on? Okay. I'm gonna skip ahead. So like I said, I tend to, well, this is what I'll do. So if I'm at the point where I'm like, all right, I got a little guy's waking up from his nap, I got to wrap this up. I'll, as quickly and as carefully as possible, bring thread up. I'll either do this or do like 4 or 5 wraps to the front, but I know that whatever I tie on this, I'm going to want it to be thick enough that this extra layer of thread is going to be wanted. So I'm going to bring it to the front, do a single half hitch, and then that's like just saved. I don't need to do anything further. I can cut the thread. Bollocks. Hold on, sorry. This, I didn't see the warning. Sorry about that. I should have seen the warning. Okay, so now I can just remove this and we're good. Cool. So like I said, this kind of fly, sometimes the materials work and they're cooperative and it's all good and I can do one of these in 45 minutes, an hour and a half, something like that. Other times it's frustrating. Okay, so sometimes the materials are just like, nah, not today, man. You're not gonna do that with me. So I'm gonna put a classic body to a fly called the Helmsdale Doctor in my vise. So I want you all to understand, right? So like, I'm gonna see if I can finish at least the wing of this fly. I'm gonna talk about wings now for a second. I'm gonna show you the wing forward. I'm gonna take part of it apart, put it back together. And then I'm gonna see if I can get this thing set on this fly. So I hope you all are like understanding that it just might not work. Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Stuff happens.
Stuff definitely happens. Sometimes really, really good stuff happens. Another time, not so much. All right. So I did this earlier. When you make these wings, it's a sneeze-free zone. It is a fan-free zone, right? So if it's the summer, you just got to deal with it, because they're little pieces of larger feathers. Okay, so this is married wing, and they are generated from the most common material being a dyed goose. Okay, so you'll see this in shop racks, select goose, and a multitude of colors. So this is the colors for the Helmsdale Doctor. Okay, I would classify this fly as, in the world of salmon flies, this is a good beginner fly, relatively easy. And you can make the wing bigger, smaller. Obviously, a smaller wing is going to be somewhat easier to set. But let's just talk feathers just for a second. So I personally don't love goose. The traditional material is swan. Okay, so that was the material, but now it's goose, and so this is some old, just white goose, and it's hard to tell, but it's not all bleached. It's just natural, which is nice because some of it's kind of cream color, some of it's kind of just a little bit off white. It's not just bleached white. I think it has a little bit more intrigue if it's not just bleached. But when you are looking at these feathers, maybe you're wondering, how do I pick a good one? And I just want to illustrate something, because hopefully the camera will pick it up. I don't know if it will, but if you were to look at this feather, there's a portion in here that basically it's almost broken, right? You can see this kink. That will always be there. There's nothing you're going to do. Maybe you can iron it out, maybe. If you iron it, the potential exists you overheat it. And if you overheat it, the first thing to go are the barbules that hold this together. So you want to set yourself for success in terms of picking the good material, picking the right materials. And so if I can find, yeah. So if you're looking at a feather that is either going to work or not work, just a simple formula to know is take the feather and then lay it up and put an approximation, like where you're going to tie it in, and does it reach the tail? In this case, the answer is yes. So that would work. A lot of it will not be long enough to tie on a 3/0 hook. And a 3/0's kind of, if you get below that, you can do it all. It gets hard to fit everything onto a hook smaller than 3/0. I do a lot with 5 and 7/0 hooks. The problem then is finding materials that are long enough for it. So if you're kind of, getting into it, 3/0's good, because if you were to just go to a shop and you can easily find, different French tinsel, different rayon flosses, you'll find select goose. You can tie these flies. So you can absolutely tie these flies. If you get much bigger than that, then it's going to be a real stretch. And shop folks hate me because I'm the guy who will sit on the floor and I'll pull the packs out and I'll recreate a pack with all the longest, best fibers out of all those packs. And the people look at me and are like, damn it, dude, why are you doing that? But it's like, that's why I go to a shop in person, because I can do that sort of thing that I can't do if I just buy it online. But you want to make sure that you're not seeing kinks like what I described already. Sometimes you'll find some just funky fibers, and again, I'm hoping that it shows up, and it might not show up very well on camera. That's the unfortunate reality, but it's what it is. But there's some things that you just can't get past. When you find the right feather, oh, I also wanted to show you something else, because when I was building this earlier, I noticed when I was using the blue. Now, in the same vein that you want these to look perfect and pretty, they're also fishing flies. So if you're using these to fish, and I'll tie these small and I will fish with them, and I've caught a lot of fish on them. It really is irrelevant what I'm talking about right now, because you're just fishing with it, it's gonna get beat up. But if you're gonna put them, you know, if you're gonna, like, my boutonniere was one of these flies, and for everyone else, and I've tied them for other people's weddings. You don't want to see things like, you can notice maybe that dark barring. So that is from the dye process, where more dye ended up on a portion of this. And if you were to see it in person, you would see more modeling effect from just a poor dye job, right? So it's just something to be aware of when you're looking at feathers, things to be cognizant of. So it's the quality of the fibers, the length of the fibers, and then you know, the uniformity of the dye. Here's another one that I would consider just not, you know, I've obviously used a good portion of it, but you can see at this upper part, either that's just a blemish in the feather itself, or it's an issue with the dye. So, you know, it's up to you. Maybe you don't care about these things, and you're probably a better person than I am, wasting so many feathers not using them because I don't like how they look. But I just wanted to give you some things to be aware of. So that being said, when you are going to actually build one of these wings, sometimes I use a very technical tool, which is an X-Acto knife with a straightened out paper clip in it. So this is a Paul Jorgensen. He passed away a number of years ago. I was lucky enough to meet him a few times, but his book, which I believe is still available, is, I think, the very best book for the person getting into fly tying. So it's just salmon flies, Paul Jorgensen. And this is a tool that he's like, hey, this is like a thing that I do. Maybe it's been done before, but we'll call it his. So it's just flexible metal in an X-Acto knife. And so if you want the same thickness of fibers, you can easily adjust how wide, it's just a paper clip, and then you can find the feather that works for you. You can go in, pierce, separate it out, and then you know, okay, here's what I want to cut, is right there. It's fine. I usually go by the number of strands. 3 to 4 strands is often what I find is a good number for these flies. So 3 to 4 strands of each feather that I'm using. If you go, I began this with 5, some of these still have 5. It becomes big enough. It's nice and bold if you can get it set right, but it becomes more likely that it's going to fold over itself and not what we'll call accordion down, and we'll talk about that more, and kind of settle the way that you want it to. So 3 to 4 strands typically is a good number of each. And obviously you might do a wing that's got 3 colors and one that's got 7. So you need to sort of adjust accordingly how many fibers are in there. Some of the flies that I have, I've got single fibers in there of certain things. And that's all kind of, what are you going for? And so if so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is 8 different feathers, right? Approximately 4 strands from each feather. So you can do the math there. But so normally what I do, let's just say I'm gonna cut some of this out so I can get this on camera. So my preference is simply to, and I'm gonna use like kind of lower quality junk stuff just so I don't have to worry about preserving this stuff for later on. Let's see if I back up a touch so it's clear. It's pretty good. So my ideal is to pull the fibers forward, and then I'm listening for the clicks. So if I want 4 strands, I'm going to get in there as tight as I possibly can with very sharp scissors, and I'm listening. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I just pull the slip out. That's my preferred method. For me, it's just easier. than dealing with a tool. I like to do as much as I can with my hands. So that's the general process. So you find the feathers, you cut out the slips that you're looking for, you lay them all out on your table, not sneezing, not having an open window, not having fans nearby, and then you build the wing. And it's really fun. It's incredibly satisfying. So it's Velcro, basically, right? And I'm sure like all of us can think back to when we were children and we're walking along the beach and we find a seagull feather, we pick it up and we play with it. And you pull the fibers apart and you push them back together. So we have this feather for this Helmsdale Doctor. So if I wanted to make an adjustment to this, let's say, all right, well, I have some lilac turkey in here and there's too much of it. It's a pain to try to set that. So I'm going to go in there with a bodkin, just hold that, pull it up until I can pinch with my fingers to keep it separate. You know, I'll take that out. And I'm showing you this to make adjustments to it, but this is the exact same way that I might just, you know, put it all together. So if I want to take a fiber out, I'll do that. All right. So I can fiddle with this very easily to get it how I want it. Okay, so I fixed that fiber, and now I'm going to go back to the remainder. You want the tips to end approximately at the same point, but generally go further out just a hair as you go towards the top. So you want it to end a little bit further in and just barely angle out. They're barbules that hold these fibers together. So you're going to pinch and just going back and forth, getting those barbules to attach to the adjacent slip. And sometimes it can take a little bit. Sometimes they go very easily, very quickly.
I gotta say, you're making this look very easy, Eric. And me personally, marrying wings I've not had good luck with it. Do you handle this section of the fly similar to what you mentioned before with compartmentalizing? So will you focus one session basically doing this construction effort and set them aside for when you're ready to tie them in at another time, or you kind of see it through and tying it in?
It depends, but yes, I would say that would definitely be like building the wing and potentially setting it might be like, yeah, in terms of compartmentalizing viewpoint, yes, I would say that, you know, if I have an evening, I can probably tie one. But yeah, definitely. And, you know, sometimes you just never go back to them. I have some wings that have just been in, you know, one of my material boxes for years and years and years that I haven't gone back to. But, you know, you can kind of mess with them and you should be able to kind of beat them up pretty good without them coming apart. But here's the thing, there's a right and a left hand feather always. So, you know, if you're having problems marrying the wings, you need to just make sure that you're thinking about it this way. So there's a right and left hand. So if I were to use this side of this feather, I would need to use this side of this feather, right? So they're going to match up and they're going to be a mirror image of each other. So I can't use, you know, the same side from that feather for the opposite side of the wing. I need to make sure I'm using two different feathers, the mirror image of those feathers. Okay. And it's really important. And the thing is, when you're doing this, to be cognizant that similar type feathers will marry much easier than others. So the bottom of this wing, with all the colored strips up to the white, they're all goose. Then I have some kind of, this is a, can't think of the name, but it's a lilac turkey, pheasant. I'm not pheasant, I apologize. This is a peacock, which is the mottled color. And then on top is some other kind of turkey. So the bottom colored fibers, very soft, right? Goose is very soft, supple feather. Turkey, pheasants, peacocks is a much stiffer, heavier material. And it's much more difficult to marry them. Some fibers are really hard to marry, like golden pheasant tail fibers, incredibly hard to marry to other things. So you got to be patient with yourself when you're doing it, knowing that, you know, you're talking about a different density feather. And that also is going to play a big role when you go to set the feathers, because what's going to happen is a lot of times the softer stuff on the bottom will want to compress and it'll separate, and the top stiffer fibers will like fold over off to the side, which is really frustrating. So I just tend to play a lot. You know, I put all the fibers out. I know that I've taken them all from the correct sides, and I might not necessarily know, okay, I have two red strips here. I'm gonna pick one up and mess it on this wing. And if it really doesn't work, maybe I got the wrong side. So I put that one down, I pick up the other, and then I mess with that. And maybe it's like, oh, the other one looked right, but this is actually the correct feather. I just had the two flip-flopped. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, cool. So yeah, it's just a matter when you have all the fibers laid out, just taking, you know, one on top of the other, adding each one, and then, you know, you should be able to kind of knock it around. If it's held together correctly and thoroughly, it shouldn't come apart too easily. Now, this is one part of it. So, you know, obviously there's the other half of the wing. So it's again mirror image. So two feathers on top of the hook shank that you want to be, you know, you want them to be matched up as best as possible. It's 8 o'clock. We're gonna see if we can do this. All right, we're gonna see if we can pull this off. Maybe it's not gonna happen. I'm on camera. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it's gonna go great. I have no idea. I'm excited to try this. So at this point, so again, Helmsdale Doctor. So tinsel tag, unlike what I showed you. Again, it's just that what I showed you to start the fly is common, not the is all end all. 2 golden pheasant crests, golden pheasant tippets that are sitting on top of the crests. This is a red dyed seal for the butt. This is a metal tinsel for the body, and then a large oval tinsel for the rib. Rule of thumb, 5 wraps for most flies. If you put too many on, it looks not so good. Sorry, it's just how it is. 5 wraps is good. If it's a smaller fly, 4 is fine. But if I'm gonna go to a bigger fly, I'm usually gonna spread the number, or I'm gonna spread the wraps out instead of adding more. Rarely will I add more than 5. If I want to get crazy, maybe 6, but that's like, if I'm doing like an 8-aught, then I might do 6. But at this point, I've done everything that I'm going to do with the white. So I'm going to go to a 14-aught black. I think this is a Vivus thread, but I'm not tied to any one company. So I'm going to just cover that because we're going to be finishing the fly with the black thread. So when you get towards the front of the fly, so I feel like you all could put on, sorry, got something in my screen, here we go. I feel like you could all put tinsel and a floss body on a fly. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to spend time doing it. I want to fill in some of those gaps. So even though I know that you can wrap Hackle, I'm going to show you, because it's a trick, wrapping, it's a canary yellow Hackle for the throat of the fly. And so there's a reason why I'm doing it, even though I know that you can all wrap Hackle. I'm very confident in that. But just for a quick something to kind of add to your repertoire. So canary yellow Hackle, I'm gonna just strip all the fluff off of this. This is just, you know, schlappen. You can get these from anywhere. This is in no way a fancy Hackle. It's got a touch of webbiness, not too much. A supple enough stem that I can wrap it. But you can see it's got some webbiness. It's got a little bit of length, not too much. I'm going to tie this in once I just put a little wax on. I'm giving myself a good amount of space for the head of this fly. I don't want to shortchange myself. Okay. So ideally, and this feather's not going to do it, but ideally I can pull the fibers down. I can deal with it. It's not a deal breaker. Let's say that much. And we're going to clean this up substantially here momentarily. About 4 wraps. It's pretty good. I'll bring this up.
Now, is this the Schlappen feather here, Eric?
Yep. Yep. Just a garden variety Schlappen. I'm going to just comb it out a little bit. So this is one method. I'll show you maybe in a second another one. But I don't really want all this stuff on top. That is not my goal, right? I want it to sit on the bottom. I don't want to strip all that stuff off though, right? But I really, what I'm looking for is like that. And this is maybe, I'll be honest, this is a little bit long. If I were to put this behind glass, I'd probably remove this, get a shorter feather. I hope you'll understand. I'm probably not going to do that right now. But here's just a trick. So I'm going to take lighter, because right now it kind of wants to sit up there. So I'm just going to get the bodkin be hot. Pull the fibers down, tap them with the hot needle, and it removes, it kind of sets the memory when you hit it with the heat. So they're not going to ever pop back up again. So the memory that they just had when they were angled up is gone. They're going to completely stay down on the bottom side of the hook now. So for you dry fly guys, right, or girls, I'm not sure who else here, but for dry fly humans, really good to know, you know, if you want to do like a hackled comparadon, you just wrap hackle, pull the hackle up, tap the bottom, and it's set. And then you don't have to trim the hackle off. You have more there to support it, rather than just cutting it off. Cool.
Would it stay that way when you fish it?
Yeah. So yeah, you've just completely, and it's like an extreme version of steaming. So you hold it down, you hit it with the heat, and then that's the new memory. It's never going to go back. So that's just a way to kind of, you know, yeah. Now I have my throat set. Totally honest, I don't like how this looks, but I also want to respect your time, give you as much as I can. I'm not going to focus on the fact that.
Eric, is that true with all kinds of feathers?
Yep. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe not. I guess I haven't done it with every single feather, but I've done it with a lot of different things. Typically, it's this when I use it, but I've never. The only thing you don't want to do is use too much heat. You might singe something. I've never had that happen. Usually, if you just have the lighter on this, by the time you've removed it from that and brought it to what you're using, it's cooled down enough that you're not going to damage the feathers. You're just resetting them. Right. All right.
That's a great tip.
Cool. Underwing of this fly is 10 to 15 peacock pearl strands. There's nothing mystical about this. It's just peacock pearl. Got 7. I'm gonna get some more. I'll just do 10. Just a clump. I'm gonna try to even them out slightly. So one thing to be aware of is in terms of proportions for these flies, in the same way that I gave you that, even on this fly, began the tag at the barb, ended it at the hook point. I'm gonna end these fibers where the tippets end. So I don't have to go any further than that. Make sense? Okay. So hold just a soft loop. I'll pull up on both the front and the back to make sure that they're sitting on the top of the fly. That works. A few wraps is all that you need to hold them. Just to get some of the loose fibers down. That's pretty good. All right. So I'm going to take one side. This is what I'll call the near side. This is towards me. And I want this to approximately end shortly inside. I want it to end within the bend or the curve of the golden pheasant crest. I'm just gonna, with my thumb now, this is sitting a little high. Let's see if I can kick that down just a little bit. Again, you're encouraging the materials more than anything. All right, let's see how this works. So near side, so the underwing, I should add, it in general adds structure to hold the main wing in place. It's oftentimes either gonna be tippets, golden pheasant, sometimes it is Amherst pheasant tippets, but sometimes it's also peacock. There's, you know, Hackle, occasionally it's jungle cock. If you're gonna use, if the recipe calls for, or if you're designing your own fly and you're gonna be using an underwing of tippets, if you look, so we have the head of the bird, here's the crests, and then if you go down the center here, you wanna make sure you're using a tippet from each side. Again, it's a mirror image of each other. So these have a curvature to them, and it's gonna be, if you pull two off here and you put them together, you're gonna have one angled down and one angled up, which is decidedly not good. You want them to both be angled down, and you're gonna do that by getting one tippet from each side. All right. So I'm gonna set one, and then I'm just gonna kind of hold it in place. And I'm just sort of using the underwing and my thumb to then lay the other half on, like so. I'm gonna make sure tips are both, or I'm sorry, the bottom is sitting flush on the very top of the hook shank. I'm just pinching. I'm gonna do a little imagining now. There's usually a bend to these. What is gonna look like, kind of like a bit of a swoop. You can often tell, you know, when you've looked at enough of these flies, you can often tell who tied the fly by the swoop. You know, it's almost uncanny how indicative it is of the tyer, just how they set their wings. And again, I have some unruly peacock curl. Come on, Hurl. I don't want it to come up above the top of the main wing. We'll see if that just did it. All right. This is giving you a good visual of setting a wing. So again, underwing and thumb.
Eric, is the idea that underwing is kind of like a, I don't know, stabilizes the main wing? Is that it?
Yep. Yeah, just add some structure to the main wing. Kind of holds it up. Not every single fly has an underwing, but is definitely much more common than not to have that underwing. So yeah, it just adds that extra structure or stability. I use a bodkin a lot, just to kind of fish in between the wings. If one of them is kind of sitting low, I can kind of pull it out and then kind of pry it up like so. You want them to be lined up both in terms of height and lined up in terms of length. Right. So that,
Eric, I don't want to distract you from this critical element of setting a married wing, but your
no,
shutter's about to close.
Yep, thanks, man. Let's see if I got the, oh no. I have to get better at this. Sorry, everyone. My camera works well, but it's got this automatic live shut off at 30 minutes.
No, the anticipation was building, and you're about to set the wing, and we would have seen it. So,
all right, we'll see how this works. All right, so I mentioned accordion earlier. So basically, and I apologize if it's not showing up super clearly if my fingers are all in the way, but what I'm doing now, I've gotten it basically where I want it, and I'm going to begin sort of compressing. So I'm pinching pretty firmly with my left hand, and I'm just compressing, making sure that keep the fibers on top of the hook shank, but compressing it down approximately, you know, to where it's going to be. Does that make sense? So these fibers are kind of like just think of an accordion. I'm trying to compress them, and then I'm going to do a soft loop, and we're just going to see what happens. And it probably won't work, but it might. So I'm going to go around once, pull up, 2 times, 3 times, make sure it's tensioned. I'm going to just let go and see where we're at. I'm going to kind of fiddle with this, see about getting that swoop that I was describing earlier. It doesn't look too bad.
It looks awesome. That technique, Eric, can you rewind? Was it like you were putting a crease in those fibers? Were you
not
bending them?
No, it's a compression.
Okay.
And so they have, so feathers are awesome, right? They can do a lot of things, and they can do a lot of things really well. One of which is they're able to keep their form, but in a smaller shape, right? So it really is, and I'm trying to think if there's a better way that I can explain it than this, but it really is if you can envision a static feather as an accordion open. And what I'm doing is I'm taking that feather and I'm compressing the accordion. So it all fits together and it all compresses in a natural way, but so that I end up with basically what I just got. Does that make sense? So
yes.
So because what can happen sometimes is you just kind of like bunch the fibers up, right? And usually when you do that, if you were to wrap them in and they're kind of bunched instead of compressed, then that's when they start to sort of like twist. They'll kind of get off kilter from each other. So this is one way, this is the other. And one will kind of get under another, and then they'll kind of just get off kilter. And that'll continue to get worse over time. So you really want them to just have that compression. And I did that by just pinching and then gently with my opposing thumb pushing down, but at the same time holding it in place.
Cool.
So
looks great.
Yeah, that's basically it. Now I'm not done yet, so we got to see if we can, you know, there's more to go, but that's generally it. So this looks pretty good. I have this one, and this is where you get like ruined, because there's this one peacock curl fiber that's driving me crazy. Are you guys going to be mad at me if I leave it there? You can be honest.
Absolutely not. I didn't even notice it until you brought it up. So.
All right. So I'm not going to. I want to keep moving. I want to keep moving. All right. So.
Hey, Eric.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment? We got a few of the people in the beginner fly tying class that are here tonight, and the wrap that you used is the pinch wrap, right? And that is exactly what we learned on the very first. I just wanted to make that connection because, you know, I think people wonder, you know, are you just, that's a super, super useful tactic, the pinch wrap.
Yeah, and there's no substitute, right? It's as important for this as it is for any other fly that you're going to tie. There's no substitute. So yeah, super critical. Thank you for pointing that out, because yeah, sometimes we, you know, if you're just learning how to tie flies, you're like, that probably isn't that important. I don't have to worry about that little detail.
Yeah.
But sometimes the details matter. Cool, thank you. All right, so I called this fly relatively simple in terms of a salmon fly because some flies once you set the main wing, you'll have shoulders of maybe a bronze mallard. You might have sides of black and white barred wood duck with some teal. Then you might have jungle cock, and then you might have some Indian crow substitute. So once you've built this underwing and main wing, then you have another 6 or 8 kind of materials you're going to be adding just to the sides of the wing, not including an additional throat, the crest, and maybe the horns, right? So this fly, if I really wanted to, if I were to abide by the recipe of this fly in the Powell's Regenstein book that I talked about earlier and I showed you earlier, I would just put a crest on, just a golden pheasant crest, and then call it, and that'd be done according to the recipe in his book. It excludes a lot of those extraneous materials. I'll add a little bit more than that, but not much, because I do want to keep moving. So I'm going to add just a few more things. So I am going to add these, what I'll call a side. And this is Indian crow substitute. So we can in no way get Indian crow anymore. But this is, I've just purchased it. I feel like I have the bag here. Yep. So, you know, you can buy this, not at every shop because it's kind of a esoteric thing, but, you know, this is a hairline product, imitation Indian crow. I think this is just starling feathers, or maybe it's the neck feathers of a pheasant, actually, like small neck pheasant of the feathers that have been bleached and then dyed. And you can get them in blue for chatterer, which is another important material. So basically these are just little, they're going to be the size, or, you know, of the fly. So I've taken these two, I've already matched them up. I pulled them out. They're pretty uniform, similar in size. So I'm going to just line them up, and I'll go back and forth. You might see what I'm doing, because I want to see the tip of this one and the tip of that one, and I want to make sure that they're the same length. Cool. And then I'll just take off the scruffy little rubbish, if you will, like so. Okay. I'm just going to cut the tips off. Probably ring neck, yeah, ring neck pheasant, I think is what it is. So that's what I'm left with. I've intentionally left the butt ends of the wing, right? There's a ton of ways I can totally screw this fly up, and if I need to go back and fix the wing later on, if I cut it now, it'd be really hard to retie this wing. If I cut that, what I would have to probably do is do the fly again on a 2/0 or a 1/0 to be able to then use the wing, because it'd be compressed or shortened. So I'm not going to cut all the butt ends off until I feel very confident that it is how I want it to be. So I'm going to do this one at a time. I'll see. I need to be able to see what I'm doing, but also I want to show you what I'm doing. So I'm just laying it on the side of the wing, gentle pinch. I want it to just set flush, flat, like so. And then you won't be able to see this now, but I'm just holding it very gently with my thumb. 1, 2, 3 reps. It's set. Okay. Okay. The last step is crest, and then we can call it with this fly. So I'm going to go to my larger box of crests. This one I clearly stripped fibers from it earlier. That's going to be a smaller fly. That's not nearly enough of a length. And it always amazes me. Like, I'll have this bin of crests, and I'll look through it, and it'll be one fly, and I'll look at the crest and be like, no, not the one. And then I go back, and all of a sudden that, for whatever reason, that crest will work for the fly that I'm tying now. So what I'm looking for, I want this to match up, or at least be pretty darn close to matching up with the length of the tail when I tie this thing in. So, but I want it to be enough of a curvature that I can go over the wing That looks like it might be the winner. We'll see if it is. Worst case, if I try this, then I end up with this feather like I tried already, where I've stripped some of the fibers off. And it's a good feather, but it's just not the right feather. And so this will probably end up on a smaller fly someday later. So it isn't like you've ruined the feather by cleaning it. It just means it's not it wasn't meant for that fly. So let's see. I'm gonna kind of eyeball it, fold it, cut it, giving myself enough room to do some adjustments with it. Okay, so shorter in stature. And then you can either use just a thumbnail, or what I'll often use is my D-loop tweezers. And I'm going to, if I get closer so you can see it more hopefully clearly. So I'm gonna just pinch the tip of that in my D-loop tweezers and then really push, compress. I want to flatten that tip of the stem. And then I'm also gonna bend it up a little bit like so. And what this is gonna do is a few different things. So one of them is, like I said, I'm flattening the stem. I just bent it. So it's gonna be an easier place to tie it in. And you can now also see that these errant fibers, I just identified, so it's very easy to just pull those off. Okay, it's a lot shorter now. And sometimes if the crest wasn't steamed perfectly, like I'm holding it, there we go. I can also kind of bend it so that it's in as straight a plane as I can possibly get it. All right, so now I have a pretty nice tie-in point. That's good. And we'll see. It's not quite bent enough. One downside to leaving all the butts on here is it's not as easy a place anymore to tie in, but maybe it'll work. I want to be able to pull that back, have it clear the wing. Yeah. Oh. Let's try that again. Relax. Kind of set it. See if I can get that swoop a little differently. Want it to kind of match up. It's all right. It's pretty good. If I can, I want to really encourage the swing up. So that it allows me to really get these tips to meet. You know, if I was really going to be fussy, I might redo the wing and just bring it in a little bit. You can see how it's coming out a touch. Excuse me, beyond the crests, but I feel like it's close enough for government work, at least for now. So I'm going to leave it. There's one, that's not true. There's two last steps. At this point, I think what I'm going to do, I think I feel comfortable enough cutting these butt ends. And as I say that, I see that my Indian crow got a little off. So I took my D-loop tweezers, I removed it. I'm going to reset it. so that it's totally flush. It just kind of, I didn't show it to you, but it was just kind of off kilter a little bit. There. That's better. All right, so this is important. If you were to just cut all the materials off, there's a degree of what I'll call shock value in that movement. When you take the scissors and you cut, it's going to kind of send these little, I'll call them little, I don't know, little shocks or little pulses out. And what that can do is kind of jostle the feathers, which is not what you want to do. So I just want to make sure that when I do cut everything, I'm just going to pinch with my left hand, come in super tight as much as possible to cut all the butts off, because that'll just kind of cushion the wing, everything that's staying, and kind of make sure it stays in place. Lots of little bits. And you just want to clean up, give yourself as much room as possible to finish the fly. So I just want to make sure I'm really getting rid of everything. So Kirk, you said that there's some folks in the Zoom now that are in the beginner class?
Yes, there's, yeah, the George Roy and the Simeons, and yeah.
That's awesome. Welcome, everyone. If you weren't here at the very beginning, after 2 years of tying flies, I began dabbling in tying salmon flies. So don't think you got to tie forever. Let's take a crack at them. Just putting that out there.
Well, there's such a history, and the art is just stunning, right?
I mean, I think so.
Yeah.
All right.
It's just a different thing out of fly tying than we typically run into.
Sure. Yeah, this is the outer edges. So we're going to do some horns. And again, if you weren't here at the beginning of the program when I was just describing kind of big picture stuff about these flies, rough approximation of butterflies is kind of the origins of this. And so, you know, now you can sort of envision maybe the legs, the body, folded butterfly wings here. And then we're going to do the antennae or the horns. So this is a blue gold macaw feather, obtainable, kind of hard to find, sorry. There's nothing you can, that I know of that you can use as a substitute for these. They're out there, you know, but just you're not going to find them in a fly shop. You got to kind of search. But the cool thing is, like, in a like general sense, you need to have, again, the right left feather to match these up. But because we're just going to use a single fiber on each side of this to finish this fly. We're almost done with this fly. But so you can see I have one single feather here. I'm going to use just going to come in here and I'm going to cut 2 fibers out. 1, 2. So that natural curve that they have is present, right? But I can't, it won't work, because if I have this one facing this way and that one facing that way, one's up and one's down. So all that I'm going to do is just give it, it's just like with ribbon wrapping a present, just a little friction. Oh, I'm doing off the camera, sorry. So I just reversed the memory of that fiber, just barely giving it some friction using my thumbnail and just running along the length. So this was angled up, now it's angled down. So now if I grab the other one that I'm not going to mess the memory of, now the blue is facing out on both, and they both are in the same plane, so to speak. So another little trick that may benefit you later on. So these, you just want them to be sort of like coming, I like them to be kind of past the apex of the golden pheasant crest. These are just going to be kind of like off to the sides. If the main wing is here, there's going to be like, you know, one here, one there, kind of off to the side. I'll type this one on. I've only done a couple loose-ish wraps. I wasn't happy. It's a little bit short. There. And because these came off right next to each other, I know that they're going to be pretty darn close in length, so I can use the length of the one that I just tied in to kind of eyeball where I want to get this one set. And I want them to be tight to the wing, kind of sitting just outside of the wing. So I'm going to, again, kind of encourage. Something like that. That's pretty good. All right. Now we're really closing in, everyone. Just about done. Trim, trim. I'm just gonna do a little once over. The final step before I tie this fly off is just to add a very slight wool head to it. And I'm gonna use seal fur, just a red seal fur. Again, obtainable, hard to find, but some good substitutes are African brown goat, like an Angora. And then my favorite is synthetic living fiber. So this is Davy Watton. This is synthetic living fiber, SLF. There's also something called Seal X that's out there. These are synthetic fibers that emulate the seal fur. So if you can't get it, then these are both good substitutes, much more obtainable than a true seal fur.
Eric, were you able to find the Seal X regionally? Because I've had a hard time trying to find that stuff.
I haven't, truth be told. I have a lot of seals, so I haven't looked for Seal X. This stuff I bought a long time ago. Like this, I've probably had since my teenage years, right? I mean, there's like some left. I've used a lot of it, but I know the Seal X exists, but I mean, we're lucky we have Mike Hogan. If you call him and, if you were to just call him and be like, hey, do you have seal? He'd probably say no. But if you talk to him, you're like, hey man, here's what's up. Then maybe not. I can't, I'm just saying, like, it's possible that he might. He doesn't always have it. But don't call him and be like, hey, do you have seal? Don't say anything else. Like, he's just gonna say no.
By the way, I have Seal X.
Okay.
Yeah. I got it when I was a teenager.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
So maybe it's out there, I don't know. So just for the sake of education, lightly waxed, thin amount. In fact, it's actually more than I want it to be. When I teach dry flies, I always talk about simply painting the thread. That's all that you want to do is just paint the thread. And this is little more than that. I don't want it to be super bulky, or this is just what the recipe calls for to finish this fly. So it's just kind of closing up and just a little color. I'm going to retighten that just a touch. 1, 2. I'm very careful as I wrap this. I'm kind of gently doing all this. Like again, if I do a regular whip finish, you don't realize it necessarily always, but you add a little, there's just a little recoil, a little bit of shock. Clean up, trim any little bits of seal that might be in the eye. And that's it. That's a Helmsdale Doctor. It's a pretty classic Irish salmon fly pattern. I think it looks pretty good. They're not perfect, but yeah, there you go. Cool. What do you think?
Great. Looks great.
All right. Questions about anything? Because that was a whole bunch of stuff that just happened.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. So you've mentioned, so this was a great primer in my opinion. You really scratched the itch for me personally. So you spoke about the, I'm thinking about next steps, literature, more research. That's how I am. You mentioned Paul Jorgensen, salmon flies. Do you have any other recommended literature for folks looking to get into this?
Yeah, so just because I don't know who was here earlier on, but I think the Paul Jorgensen salmon fly book is the book, bar none. That is the best one if you're just getting into it. This goes through a lot of the basic techniques. It's generally, his whole thing was simplified recipes, using a lot of substitutes, knowing that people can't get their hands on, Argus pheasant and some of these really obscure materials. It's a lot of much more obtainable materials and simplified recipes in here. Lots of great pictures. That's one. One of my favorites is this book called Tied in Hand. Let me see if I can let me switch. Hold on one second. I'm gonna go to just a different camera here. Maybe this will, I can kind of showcase it better. So maybe not, I don't know. Tied in Hand by Sven Olav Hard. And this is much more historically accurate. And it's called Tied in Hand because the traditional method is not even using a vise. It's just literally holding the hook in your hand, building it that way. And I've done that, and it is a real pain. If you think that just tying one of these things is hard, like, yeah, what's that, Bob?
At Somerset, there was a lady tying the salmon flies by hand.
Yeah,
quite a few years ago down there.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly haven't given it like, the maybe appropriate attempts. I've done it, but it's really hard to do that. But that's where the name came from. But this is a lot of really traditional patterns. This, I was actually given, Chaz gave this to me, he might not remember, but like years and years and years ago, I was tying at this is just obviously photocopied. This is hard to get your hands on, but this is Price Tannant, How to Dress Salmon Flies. So Price Tannant was he and George Kelson were kind of the two primary authors, fly tyers in like the 1800s. So a lot of the patterns came from those guys. There was many tyers, but Price Tannant and George Kelson were kind of like the traditional authorities of full dress salmon flies. And so this is I'm very thankful that he gave this to me. It's obviously a substantial book, and there's a great resource there. So again, if you search eBay, you'll find it. Another cool book. It's maybe not as useful in some ways, but it's The Salmon Fly by Dunham and Clayton. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Judith Dunham. And this is an interesting book because it highlights well-known tyers across the planet. So it's divided up geographically, and it tells about these various tyers, but it really is a cool showcase because you might see the same fly in here 4 or 5 or 6 times, but it's such a dramatically different interpretation of it that it's it's almost a whole different fly in some ways. So it's a really cool kind of representation of, even if it's like you're following the recipe to tie a Helmsdale Doctor, somebody else tying the fly next to you is going to make it look completely different in some ways. So it's a really cool just cross section of sort of geographically unique fly tyers. So those are a few that are my go-tos when I'm looking up information on flies. So yeah, hopefully that might help some of you. I feel like, I mean, there's so much more I can say. I have more things I can talk about. It's 8:45 though. Any other questions for me? Maybe I can clarify something. If I skimmed over a topic that you wanted to know more about. Nothing. That's fine.
No, Eric, again, this is an art. It's an art form. I know we're tying flies, but what I just saw there was an art form, and you made it look very easy. So thank you very much. And on the comment there, I just thought of it just for just a general comment. I watched a documentary not too long ago on, it's called The Lost World of Mr. Hardy. And, you know, back in the day, UK, they had the magazine they put out every year, and they had a segment in the documentary where a gentleman was working for the Hardy Company, and his specific job was tying flies of this nature, all by, like Bob mentioned, all by hand. So I thought that was pretty unique, and it's cool to see the tradition still being carried on, and the art form still out there. So just a general comment.
Yeah, there's still plenty of folks still doing it, and yeah, the hardest part is getting the material, I think, and you have to be a patient individual. It's just how, like, there's no getting around that, because you're going to make mistakes and you're going to get frustrated and you're going to want to just throw your vise across the room. You shouldn't do that. You should just keep trying and just take the materials off and just say, you know what, it's all learning and it's all good, and then try it again. I mean, I've been doing this now for, well, okay, so 20 years I've been tying these flies, and I have a ton to learn. Like, I feel like I'm pretty good, but I'm not, you know, yeah. All I'm trying to do is to improve, and that's 20 years in. So, yeah, absolutely reach out to me if you have questions about it. If you hit a wall and trying it and you're like, I just can't do this. I had a laundry list of other techniques I thought I might show, but I didn't quite know how the talk was going to go. So if you're trying it and you're just like struggling, just by all means, you can ask. You know, you can my websites, just Google Streamflow Fly Design. You'll find my website. That way, you know, I'm on social media platforms. Just look me up there, and I'm happy. I usually have a few like running threads with individuals, many of whom I don't even know, and they're just asking me questions, and I love answering them. So, yeah, by all means.
Oh, I have one more question.
Sure.
You mentioned Mike Hogue for procurement of unique materials. Do you utilize anybody else for materials that, you know, specific to these flies, that it's a unique material that may have been cited out in one of those books you showed, that you know that this other supplier, you know, usually supplies unique materials of that quality for flies like this, other than Mike?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, that's a terrible answer. I hate saying it.
Sounds like you go around, you just dig around and find what you need.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like Chaz might have an answer that's better than mine. I've lucked into meeting people at like big shows. I've, you know, done a lot of shows, and so I've looked into folks who have been able to help me out obtaining materials, and I will recommend, there are some, especially on Facebook, some groups devoted to this type of flying, excuse me, fly tying, and yeah, I don't know, Chaz, did you want to say something? It looked like you had a comment.
Yeah, so one of the guys that I got some stuff from was Feathers MC. And I don't know if he's still in business or not, but I got some great stuff from him. Shoulder, turkey, dyed turkey, even has a Corey Bustard program where he takes feathers from zoos and he actually gives this stuff away.
Yeah, I've not bought feathers, but yes, I've come across it in quite a bit. I used to buy a lot from like Hunter's Angling Supplies. I bought a lot of materials from Ray Grander when he had his shop in Pine Valley. Before Nicholas, he had a bunch of decent materials, and you know, I've been lucky because I guess I had the advantage that I started when I was really young, so I talked to people who were vastly superior to me, and they'd be like, "Holy whatever, you're a kid doing this. Let me give you some stuff." So I was able to benefit. I don't have that luxury anymore. But that's, you know, so I've come across things a lot of different ways. And, you know, sometimes I'll just Google, like, I need lilac turkey or something. And, you know, there are some small shops out there that sometimes have it and sometimes not. And you'll just look into it. The best thing that I would say is find some recipes that don't include a ton of crazy stuff. And just tie those. And then if there's a pattern that appeals to you and you're like, I just need this one other thing, try to find that one other thing or the substitute version of it. Because there's a lot that you can do with different kinds of turkey tail that's really easy to get. Like, I mean, I've shot enough turkeys and they're all different enough that the modeling is a little different, the coloration is a little different, that like I can use that to kind of, it's like an equivalent to certain other things. Apiaries, sometimes you can go to and be like, can I just get some of your drops? But if they have like a peacock walking around, that bird's going to let loose a lot of feathers here and there. And usually people are happy to get rid of them because they feel bad just tossing them. You know, if you get into this, like, you're going to get weird. Like, I mean, fly tires are weird enough as it is, right? Like, I've picked up enough roadkill over the years that qualifies me already. It's just like kind of an oddball. But like, you'll see you'll come across people and you'll be like, oh yeah, what do you do? And like, oh, you know, like a good friend of mine worked at a place and they just had peacocks walking around, and like, I was good friends in high school with my best friend in high school. His parents had an ostrich farm, right? They had 200 head of ostrich. And so I was able to, like, I have several lifetimes worth of ostrich feathers just because I tied flies and there was endless. So my point is, like, if you have a desire to get this stuff, like, there's usually ways, but you should also read The Feather Thief and don't do that. Because you don't want to go to jail for a long time trying to like steal extinct birds' feathers from places. Don't be that guy again. Yeah. But there's legal-ish ways to like get stuff. So yeah.
Cool.
there you go.
Cool.
Yeah. Any other questions for me?
I have something to add.
Yeah, Chaz, please. Because Chaz critiqued my flies when I was like young. So I mean, I know that you've tied these things for a long time.
Yeah, but the truth of the matter is, most of them never made it past the razor test. So I get to the point where I didn't like them and they just get swooped right off. But first of all, great tie. You did a super job, and it's always tough being in front of the camera, you know, and trying to produce something. But great set in the wing. I can't tell you how many married wings I've done that have ended in divorce. So, you know, it's just one of those things that happens. But so you made some great points there. You had a piece of bone and you were burnishing, which means softening the floss. Burnishing is great for underbodies also. Super job. I use a piece of rounded glass. So anything that you have is smooth, that won't rough up the floss, is great. Material preparation and manipulation, super important. And it also folds back to all your regular fly tying, right? I mean, if something doesn't go on right, well, you got to take it off and fix it. And salmon flies are a lot of forward and reverse, 5 wraps on, 2 wraps off, back and forth. Primping, you did a lot of primping on the wing. Great. You know, that's what it needs to get it set straight. The horns and the sides, all the same thing. You got to primp. Sometimes you have to bend the rachis a little bit this way or that way and make it work. You know, again, great corollaries back to regular fly tying. If something doesn't sit right, take it off and make it right. Mm-hmm. one of the things with the wings that I learned was I'd put a wing on and it wouldn't work, and I'd put it on and it wouldn't work, and then I'd bunched it up. So I'd have to take it off, put it in the little pliers, and re-steam it to make it the portion flat again so I could work it. Tied in hand, great. A lot of books out there about tying stuff, and that's the way they used to do it, right? Was they just set the hook right in their hand, and then they go to work. You know, there was the catch and the wrap and all this different things techniques where they learned how to pinch things with different fingers and make it work. Again, I said Feathers Mick, MC, and I got a lot of stuff from him, and a lot of it was great quality. I know he sells a lot of turkey, different colors and stuff. Goose shoulder has always been a little soft and hard for me to manipulate properly. Sometimes it marries well, sometimes it doesn't. Golden pheasant tail, again, tough, bringing those together. Sometimes you just have to take a golden pheasant tail and say, that's not the tail that I'm going to work with, and go to a different tail completely and try and make it work.
Yeah.
There's a movie out there, I think it's on Netflix, and I think the person is Megan Boyd, and she talks about traditional salmon flies. Really good watch. I thought it was great. An older woman in Scotland and her life and stuff. It was really great historic perspective. One of the people that I learned a lot from, although he tends to be a little bit, I think, rigid and stuff, is Mike Radensich. He's got a bunch of books out there, patterns and different things, videos. Again, watching him is like kind of taking a lesson. You know, you're like, wow, you know, he does it so smoothly and so purposefully. It's almost like, do you really tie this way? So it's kind of hard to sometimes to get yourself to do that, you know. So, but it's great. I see a lot of corollaries to normal fly tying, and I would encourage anyone to pick it up and try a few of these. Simpler ones are better at first, but obviously anything you learn from doing is going to help you out.
Yeah, and you know, part of this too, like I really wanted to focus on this type of fly for the talk, but you know, part of it too is there's a range of other kinds of flies in the same kind of vein as this married wing type, right? So you have just like a simple strip wing, which will sometimes be just like a wing of golden pheasant tail or of turkey with maybe teal over it, like just two materials, and that's it. And a simple floss body with a tinsel or two, and like that's the fly, and that's a very effective fly, and it's a beautiful fly. You know, there's like one of my favorite flies is just like in Alexandria. Let me switch over back to the other camera. Let's see, are you still awake? You gonna switch for me or not? I hope I didn't just make a mistake. Come on. Switch.
It looks like a Nikon. Is it a Nikon?
It is a Nikon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good camera. I don't know, it looks frozen to me. Are you guys seeing that it's switched over?
No, I haven't switched over yet.
Nuts.
It's frozen on your
Yeah. Well, let me see if I will this fix it. All right. Not going to worry about it. Point being, Alexandria, peacock wing, jungle. It's not a great quality, but you know, simple flies, and it's you don't have to start here. You can start with like a simple spay fly, which is just, I mean, it's not simple, but it's just got one material for the wing. It's golden or bronze mallard. It's kind of hard to work with, but it's a single material, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And the more you do them, the more you'll pay attention to some detail you might not otherwise pay attention to, and there's a degree of sort of precision, I guess, and that will definitely, you know, cross over to other areas of fly tying. So you'll look at your nymph tying completely different after you've kind of gotten into this a little bit, and just that attention to detail that you might not necessarily have. So, you know, hopefully you were able to walk away from this with a few different tips, and maybe some desire to try even just a simple version of a salmon fly. I'll fish these in smaller flies. You know, where I live, we have landlocked salmon, and I've caught plenty of them on these flies. So they do still work, and you know, so I always like the weird stuff, and this is definitely one of the weird things, but it's also got a lot of history to it, and it's just sort of this unique niche within kind of the broader sense of fly tying. So,
hey, Eric.
Yeah.
What do they look like after you fished with it? Do they stay looking pretty good, or do they get
No.
kind of messed up?
I mean, they get what ends up happening is the colors blend. So after, especially if you've caught a few fish, you'll end up kind of like almost combing the wing out. And so that rather than this blocked like strip of blue, strip of whatever, once you've fished a little bit, it tends to be kind of, the fibers will kind of blend together. And I have the material set to show you a stacked wing, which is the same kind of end result. There's obviously not time for it, but I think it looks better once you fish it for a while personally, because you do get this really cool, like kind of undulating contrast of colors, especially once you've caught a few fish on there. You know, if I had thought, I could have taken some photos of some of them or had some available and kind of showing you a little bit what they look like after they've caught some fish. But the wing compresses down a little bit, and then it just, yeah, the colors blend. So,
Thanks.
yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks a ton, Eric. Great stuff. And, you know, everyone is, you see the messages there. Everyone's very appreciative, and certainly inspired me to start looking into this. So great job. And again, thank you very much. I understand the pressure that's on you tying, and that these are not quick ties, and you did a great job. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for having me.
Yep.
Super fun.
If we have any questions, because I know I'll have some, please shoot me an email or send you a text on Facebook or something and getting into this. Cool.
Yeah, shoot me a message, shoot me an email if you want to. Streamflowflydesign@gmail.com is, you know, the easiest email that you can find me at, but
Great.
Google it and you'll find me there.
Awesome.
Yep. Yeah, I tie a lot of these for folks. I've tied them for boutonnieres, like I said earlier. I've tied them for memorials, plenty of, you know, people just, you know, in terms of like a remembrance, and then just a lot of folks that have them on their walls. So
we saw one of your items, one of your flies get auctioned off at the Leon Chandler event just prior to Christmas, or I think it was around the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, you know, they go for big bucks. Let's just put it that way. And rightfully so, because it's art. So
yeah, I try to not charge an arm and a leg. Sometimes it's hard especially when you're designing it and you're starting from nothing.
Yeah.
That's time consuming compared to just going with the recipe and tying something that already exists, you know, thinking of what colors work together, whatnot. But it's also, to me, more interesting than just tying an established pattern.
Yeah.
Somebody in this chapter actually won it.
TC, I think, got it, right? I think Kirk, was it TC?
It's hanging above his tying. I don't know. Are you here?
Yes, it was TC.
Yeah, it was TC and Kirk. They were neck and neck, and TC had that last bit of gas in the tank, I guess.
Yeah, right.
It's in his tying area now. So
don't rub it in on Kirk. I think the wound is still fresh.
Yeah. No,
sorry, man.
I'm telling you, that is a beautiful fly, and TC is so happy with it. It's so cool.
Yeah,
it's so cool.
What was the pattern?
I made it up. In fact, actually, I think Matt showed it in the intro. It was it's like a blue-bodied thing. I don't know if you want to pull it up. It's there. I think I saw it. If you go back to not to put the pressure on you. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, I got it.
I was just saying, like, it is there if you were to share. Yeah. So the bottom right. So it's got feathers behind it and whatnot. That was like kind of, I just finished the fly. So that's a jointed body, which means that there's the back half with a butt of ostrich in the middle, and then the front half, underwing actually a golden pheasant tail. And then the wing, I don't know if you can make it bigger, but the wing is actually kind of unique because there's single fibers of peacock in there that actually only go about halfway. So it makes kind of a cool, I don't know, I think it's kind of a unique effect that's pretty unusual, where the bulk of the wing, you have that model of the single fibers of peacock throughout it. But then as you get beyond that, then you have just the solid colors of the back. So, you know, it's got a married wing for the tail, and then it's got jungle cock or jungle fowl, whatever you want to call them, nails, the kind of prominent kind of yellow, black, white feather at the front,
Right.
and then the blue throat. So yeah, that's what he asked for. The one on the left actually is I gave as a gift to the president of the TU chapter in Ithaca. That is just something that I kind of put together. It's 3 colors of floss in the back half of the tail or of the body, kind of similar colors actually. And then on the top and the bottom, so the underwing is jungle cock, and then on the top and the bottom are also jungle cock as sort of the side and the throat as well. That one came out pretty rad, I thought. I like that one.
Nice.
But yeah, so you know, they have that general sort of similarity, but then within that, there's quite a bit of differences. So yeah, and then moving up the 3, the top is a black dog, middle is a Marlage, and the bottom is a Helmstall dock, which I tied tonight. All classic patterns, and then it is a very clean, simple, small fly. It's like a size 6. In the top right, you know, just a very simple wing, brown rayon floss body, and black. Just, you know, I like that kind of thing. Just super clean, streamlined, contemporary kind of look. I don't always like a ton of stuff going on. You can sort of, I think, appreciate what's there when there's not quite as much to look at. So
yeah, great work, Eric. Fantastic. Mastered your craft clearly. So
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I see one of those has a blind eye. Do you do much blind eye, or do you stick with the standard loop?
I do some with blind eyes, and sometimes, like when I do boutonnieres, a lot of times I'll do blind eye hooks, but no gut, because it's just not necessary. So I've done boutonnieres for some weddings, mine included, and I think it's kind of a cool look. But I have gut, you know, it's literally like intestinal material, very thin strips or strands. It's round, and you soak it, and you twist it on top of itself very tight, and then so you soak it so it very much softens. You twist it, and then you hold it, you tension it when twisted, and allow it to dry completely. And then when it dries, that is what was utilized, and you'd use a hitch, not a knot, before there were actual loop eyes on hooks. So that was the method of attaching. It would be, I'm not sure what the hitch was called, but so it would kind of connect around that, so to speak, through the gut to kind of keep it oriented. And then actually the loop eye of these hooks, it's not like it just ends. There's a large amount of material that goes further back, and that's intentional as well, to protect what used to be very weak, what was tippet material, basically, like you know, horsehair or whatever it was. So there was no like rough edges for that material to catch on. So the loop eye on these hooks, when they began using loops, went much further back on the hook shank in order to protect that really weak tippet material. So yeah, I do some with gut, but I have have some left, and I have to just twist some up. I don't have any at the moment, but that's definitely the classic way to pursue it. But yeah,
cool.
There you go.
Well, thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you.
Welcome.
This was a real treat. So with that being said, I'll conclude the meeting, and thank you, Eric, for all the preparation that it took to do this. I mean, I know that married wing set, that's not something that's done quickly. So thank you for all your preparation in doing this, and we really appreciate it.
Well, I was happy to have the chance to do it. Like I said, this is not something that happens all the time. So yeah, I was glad to show you all folks, you know, 1 degree of this, and hopefully y'all can walk away with some new techniques.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
cool.
Thank you very much. Have a nice night, everyone.
Dude, thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Best to you, Eric. Thanks.
Thank you. Good seeing you, Chaz.